There we go. Nice way to start the day right there. This swim jig going through the grass. Not a bad fish here at all. Going through the grass here in the swim jig. That's what I'm talking about. We've got the classic here with a roach chunk on here. Does the trick. Hey, what is going on YouTube? Welcome back to One Cast Fishing. Welcome back to the channel. You know, I've done this intro about 4 times, realized my mic wasn't on, so here I'm doing it again. But I'm out here in Lake Tillery in North Carolina this morning. Decided to get a little change of scenery off my 400-acre lake. I got a tournament out here in about 3 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks. So I wanted to get out here and do some pre-fishing, see if I can get on a pattern. And you saw me catch that fish in the very beginning on the swim jig. And that's the pattern I developed today. These fish are eating the swim jig. So today's video, decided to do a swim jig video, talk about how I'm targeting these fish, where I'm targeting that, talk about line, rod, reel, the whole 9 yards, and we're gonna catch some fish. So make sure you like and subscribe, stay tuned. You'll probably learn something today, at least you see how I like to fish in the swim jig during the post spawn. And if you're out here fishing Lake Tillery soon, you might be able to put the same pattern together. So let's go ahead and do it. Let's go catch some fish and let's talk about the swim jig. Oh, that's not the way to do it, but he's in the boat. Another one on the swim jig. They were biting it today. Another little guy. That's not what you do. You don't want to drop them like that, but got him in the boat. Good deal. I think I already said it, but let's keep fishing. All right, let's take a second to talk about exactly how I'm catching and targeting these fish this morning. So this lake, Lake Tillery, has a lot of emergent vegetation. This vegetation is starting to come out. It grows up to a depth of about 2 feet, so from the bank out to 2 feet. So in some places that might be 4 feet off the bank. In other places, if the slope was more gentle, maybe a long tapering point, it comes out to 30 or 40 feet off the bank. But what I'll do, sorry, heard something jump over there. I'll cast up into that vegetation and I'll start reeling pretty much as immediately as it hits the water. And I'll do 4 or 5 cranks, I'll stop, 4 or 5 cranks, I'll stop. If I take a piece of vegetation, a piece of that grass, or maybe get hung up, I'll pop it. Right, let that skirt flare and catch that reaction strike. Now right here where I'm at exactly, there's actually some wood and laydowns around this grass. So I'll throw up in that as well and work it through the grass and the laydowns. Now if there's a laydown there, same thing, 4 or 5 cranks, I'll kill it. 4 or 5 cranks, I'll kill it again. But if I come over top of a branch or a log, I'll kill it right on the other side of it, let it flutter down and hopefully get that reaction strike. Again, because I'm fishing so shallow and through this grass. Just like when I talked about with my bladed jig video, and that was emergent grass, I'm keeping my rod tip up because it is so shallow. Again, reeling it pretty fast. Again, these bass want to chase, they're hungry, they're post spawn, and that's how I'm targeting these fish right now on this pattern. There's a lot of other ways to catch them, and we'll talk about that through the day as well. Just had the camera on. Oh, that's a good bass. That's a good bass. Come here. That's a good bass, guys. On the swim jig again. There we go. That's a nice one right there. That is a nice fish right there. Nice fish. I'm gonna put her in the live well, just like the other fish. We'll get a weight on this one later because this is probably 4 or 5. Good fish. Spawned out, you can see by the tail there, and should probably talk about what I'm using right now and my setup to catch these fish. Live well she goes. The sun should be okay here. It's about to peek over that tree right now. But I had to get around, hopefully the lighting's okay, and 2, I had another boat coming, so I want to let him get around so he could fish. But as promised, you saw me come with that good fish, and I'll weigh it later. I want to talk about what I'm using to catch these fish in my setup. So this is our swim jig. This is our 3/8 ounce. This is our classic. So it's a green pumpkin, with pumpkin color in there. It's a great bluegill imitation. Obviously you can see the red eyes on there. I'm using a rage chunk. Couple of things for that. Again, I'm fishing real shallow. These fish are post-spawn, and I want to give that bluegill imitation, so the rage chunk does really well in green pumpkin. It's a compact, so I can get it through this vegetation or lay downs or on docks very easy. These appendages, though, flap a lot, so they give a lot of action in the water, which really helps to allow this bait to stand out. Two, I shorten up the skirt just to give more of that compact view, and then when it hits something, it still flutters and can get that reaction strike. I'm using straight braid today, 30-pound braid. Again, the water's pretty muddy, so I'm not too concerned about the visibility, but I'm throwing it around grass, even if it's emergent vegetation around docks and laydowns. And when you do that, I like to be able to have braid to rip through, make sure it doesn't get beat up, and I'm not going to lose a fish because that line's been nicked up all day. So braid's a good option for these conditions. I'm using a Shimano convergence reel, nothing special. I think they're like 80 bucks. This is a 7.2 medium heavy extra fast. It's their worm and jig rod. I can cast it a long ways. It's got a lot of backbone, so I can really yank these fish out if they get thick in the vegetation. It's extra fast, so I can pop it, right? The tip goes back real easy, so I can work this bait as I want. And then I'm using the Daiwa Tortula. It's a 7:3-to-1 gear ratio, which I like for this type of swim jig fishing. If I'm slow rolling out deep, using a ½ ounce, an ounce, then I might want something a little slower, but then I could always, slow my reel down. But this fast reel allows me to keep this bait pretty much on top of the water, above a lot of that stuff, the roots of this grass, or keep me on top of a lot of the laydowns. So I'm just jumped down right there. So again, I like a 7.3-to-1, a 7.1-to-1, something in the 7 when I'm fishing my swim jig shallow and I'm using a pretty light swim jig. So with that said, that's my setup today. All right, so I'm obviously going to keep casting, trying to pick up a couple more fish, but I want to talk about exactly why I chose the swim jig today. It's the spring, it's post-spawn, water's about 64 degrees, 65 degrees. A chatterbait or spinnerbait a lot of times is real good for these conditions. But I'm fishing real shallow in this emergent vegetation, and a swim jig, because of the narrow design and because there's no blade or anything extra attached to it, it's going to come through the vegetation a little bit better than those other options. Two, this week we had a front come through. A couple days ago, a lot of rain. I'm talking about a couple inches of rain, a lot of wind. So this water is real muddy. So typically that would be a good chatterbait, spinnerbait type of day. But it's a post-front day. It's like the first post-front day. We got bluebird skies above us, sunny, extremely calm out here. We're not supposed to get hardly any wind today. So I think the bass want something a little more finesse. Fortunately for me, this muddy water will probably keep them a little shallow, but they may not something with a lot of flash, a lot of movement, a lot of vibration. And that's why I think this swim jig works extremely well under these conditions. So again, in the springtime, post-frontal, bluebird skies, a lot of times I am going to opt for a swim jig, especially when I'm fishing vegetation, laydowns, even around docks. So that's ultimately the reason why I chose a swim jig today. And so far it's been working out. So we'll keep fishing, hopefully get on a few more.
He's coming right at me. He is coming right at me. Oh my Lord, he came right at me. That's crazy. I couldn't catch up to him hardly. I didn't think he was hooked. Biggin, biggin, biggin. Ah, not a bad boy. Another one here on the swim jig.
I'm fishing all this grass right along here, and it's pretty thick through here. Again, that's where I've been getting most of my bites all day. But you may still come across laydowns, and that's a good opportunity to still catch fish, because some fish may be relating to wood, even if your dominant pattern may be grass. Just like a jig or Texas red, what I will do with a laydown, this is a little one here, but I'll just cast in there, I'll let it fall down right next to that wood, I'll look to see if my line moves, and then I'll pop my rod a couple times, let it lift up, and then I'll swim it back to the boat, just like I would if I was swimming through the grass. 4 or 5 cranks, and then I'll stop it. And then ideally, when you get around these laydowns and you can pitch in there, you might be able to pick up a couple extra fish, or you might be able to determine a pattern, a secondary pattern or a pattern that's changed. If you continue to just you know, use your swim jig, swim it along, pitch it in there, you know, work it kind of like a regular jig in some of this other structure. You may be able to figure something else, or if the bite turns off around the grass, you might be able to identify that secondary pattern to pick up a couple more fish. So again, the swim jig is, what I'm trying to say is, it's extremely versatile, and you can fish it multiple ways. And as you can see, I'm coming up on a dock here as well. And the same thing applies. You can pitch it around these pilings. Now, you can't really skip under there. At least I can't, because you can see that's a pretty narrow head there. And I have a rage chunk. If I had a beaver bait with more surface area on the bottom, it might be a little easier. So I want to attempt to skip this, but I'm sure some guys can. But again, you could still cast up there. Throw it up on the dock if you want and drag it down. But cast and pitch up there around those pilings. And again, there might be 1 or 2 fish throughout the day as you're targeting, you know, the grass like end of the day. Might be able to pick up a fish or 2. Haven't been able to do it yet. Again, my dominant patterns is grass. Another option you can do around docks is you can cast parallel to it, and those fish will sit up on those pilings waiting for bait fish to come by. And if you just swim your bait fish by, just like you would, 4 or 5 cranks and stop, you might target some of those fish who are under the docks or on the outsides of the docks to come out and strike your swim jig. So that's another option as well. The swim jig is extremely versatile, and it can be fished a lot of different ways than what I'm primarily doing today, which is through the grass. But that's how I like to do it. If I knew the fish were on a dock pattern, I'd probably use an Arky head jig, or you know, a weightless or Texas rig or something a little different. But because I know the fish are on this grass pattern and the swim jig is working, I'll use my swim jig to cast up there and try to get a couple extra bites on those docks. Hey guys, I'm sitting down here, which means I'm wrapping up the video. In fact, I tried to wrap it up about 5 minutes ago, but I didn't press record on this camera here. So you saw me catch 4 fish. I actually caught 5. I got a limit, but I'm having issues with one of my GoPros and it wasn't recording, so unfortunately you're not going to see that fish on camera. But I caught all my fish the same way, all in the swim jig, and I'll link what I'm using down below. But this is actually one that I make. They are available. This is the classic swim jig. It's just a green pumpkin, bluegill imitator. I'm using a rage chunk on it. All the fish were caught up really shallow in the grass. I was casting up towards the bank, reeling this swim jig through the grass, and that would cause the bass to strike. And again, a couple small ones early on, and starting getting some better size later in the morning. So excellent day. I hope this pattern holds for Tillery in a couple weekends. I'll probably come out here and pre-fish again to make sure I can still get on this pattern. But great day to be out here. Great change of scenery. I definitely enjoyed the day. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. You learned a little bit about swim jig fishing, at least how I fish them this time of year in the spring, and for these post-spawn bass. But again, thanks for watching. Make sure you like, you comment, let me know how you fish a swim jig, and make sure you subscribe. So take it easy. Remember, a lunker's one cast away.